Hi, how are you today? So, today we're going to be discussing kind of a triggering topic for me. I will do my best for educational purposes to kind of like stay on point and keep it to things that I think will be very informative, but at the same time, this is my lived experience. This is something that I have 30 years of experiencing issues of oppression on, and 30 years of trauma related to how hearing people discriminate against me. Um, and so, to that regard, um, because this is free content for my own processing, this is me venting as well. And I feel part of anti discrimination work is going to be being able to listen to the people who experience the discrimination that you don't experience and let us bitch as we need to bitch, because I really struggle when people are perpetuating discrimination against deaf people and then they expect deaf people to not tell them that's discrimination, or they want to argue with deaf people about what is or isn't discrimination. And if you're not deaf, you have no lived experience on deafness, so you've never experienced discrimination as a deaf person, and you can't decide what is or isn't discrimination because you don't know. You know what I'm saying? Um, and the gaslighting deaf people on deafness is discrimination. So we're going to be discussing a lot of that today. It's called hearsplaining. We're going to be discussing whether or not the concept of tone deaf is discrimination, and we're going to be looking at a specific case study with Ammy Robinson in terms of how she normalizes discrimination against deaf people and how her audience perpetuates it, and how I believe her content and the way she doesn't read or moderate the comments against deaf people, or against me as a deaf person rather, fucking is harmful in my opinion. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. So first we're going to check out my experience with Ammy Robinson using tone deafness as an insult that's been really bothering for me. Then we're going to look into some sources that I've prepped regarding the concept of is tone deaf discrimination, as well as general ableism and audism, AUDISM. Um, Not the one with the T. I said not the one with the T. Letter T. There we go. I don't know what the fuck that first thing was there. Okay. And then we're going to look over some previous content that I've done on this material as well. And that previous content is slightly out of context here, of course, because it's about other situations. But if you want to, the original videos are linked in the description of this one. And in those video descriptions, I do have links to the original context of those videos if you want to get the full background on how the posts came to be. So yeah, we're going to discuss this more as we go. So I'm going to roll my intro and then we'll get this bit started. Thanks for being here. Hi, my name is Lexi, aka Deaf Child. I'm born deaf, hard of hearing. My team was one of the top teams between 2020 and 2024 in New Orleans and Louisiana. I began doing business as Deaf Child in 2013, marketing 2011, and sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales, and I have my Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. So, basically the first thing that really just kind of like spurred me to want to make this video today was a lot of the dialogue that was occurring in the comment section of this video. I didn't get a specific comment from Ammy Robinson herself. I'm not going to refresh the page for this comment. After I exit this, I don't plan on going back. I turned off my notifications. for commentary on this video, and I'm just not interested in coming back here to see anything further on that because of the type of environment that is in the comment section. I feel it extremely harmful for deaf people, so I'm really just making this video to spread awareness about what is a safe environment for deaf people and to let deaf people know about a situation I experienced so deaf people can decide whether or not deaf people feel safe in this environment. Um, Let me see if this captioner is getting this right. Oh shit, I am so shocked. It actually has been. It usually doesn't, but it did. For the, it usually says TH instead of F, so this is great for once. So in this video here, if we hit Control F and we go through the transcript, at 4 minutes 13, she says tone deaf. At 4 minutes 32, tone deaf in the transcript here. 9 minutes 21, 11 minutes 6 seconds, 13 minutes 35, and 13 minutes 39. 17 minutes 10 seconds. She says it a lot there. And so as she was saying these comments, I left my initial comments when I first started hearing it, and then throughout that next few minutes there, I was like, wow, she's still saying these things, And so my initial comments were, it's ableism to use tone deafness to exclude or degrade others. I hope one day you stop using language that discriminates against deaf people. You do it a lot. I said, what's wrong with being tone deaf? Why do you dislike deaf people? And then I said, I used to subscribe to you, but your discrimination against and hatred for me based on my deafness is very triggering. The way you normalize discrimination against us is so hurtful. I hope one day you stop discriminating against deaf people. I hope one day you accept us. I hope one day you care about human rights. And then Brassy Bollocks 2303 said, are you seriously getting in a heightened emotional state and accusing someone of hating you, personally hating you, for simply using the phrase tone deaf? Because that's honestly laughable. Like, I'm sorry you're upset by it, but it's a popular and accurate phrase that has nothing to do with people who are hard of hearing or deaf. And I responded, if you are hearing speaking over deaf people on deaf issues is discrimination. It is hearsplaining. The etymology or origin of tone deafness comes from measuring deaf tones of deaf people to then legally decide how much access they would give us in society. Using a term rooted in our oppression and our deaf identity to perpetuate discrimination against us is you being ableist and audist, as well as gaslighting me on this. Innocent Nemesis 3519 said, this is a major reach. Projecting your own triggers to create an issue where it doesn't exist doesn't mean someone has to capitulate, to make you feel better. Not everything is about you and your personal triggers. Log off and touch some grass. Power and Paint 14 said, tone deaf doesn't mean literal deafness. It's not ableism. Yuki Leyu said, take an internet break. Tone deaf has been a term for a long time and is even in a dictionary for not just being able to hear changes in tone. It also means disapproving, not understanding how people feel about something or what is needed in a particular situation. I responded to Power and Paint, using deaf identity as an insult and then saying we didn't mean it, so it's not discrimination, is discrimination and deflection of accountability. If you are not deaf, you can't decide what is or isn't discrimination against deafness. If you are deaf, just because you don't feel discriminated against by the use of deafness as an insult doesn't mean it's okay for you to tokenize yourself to invalidate other deaf who do feel. And my comment seems to be cut off there, but I feel like it was going to say you do feel, it is who do feel discriminated against. If you are not deaf, if you have no lived experience on this issue to understand it, tone deaf is literally a medical condition, and using medical conditions as insult is ableism by definition. To my response to Innocent Nemesis 519, I included what I said to Powder and Paint 14, and I also said, if you are not deaf, just feel just because you have no lived experience on this issue to understand what it is like doesn't mean someone who is deaf and tone deaf telling you this is discrimination is reaching. There's a big difference between asking others not to discriminate against deaf community versus needing to work on triggers from personal trauma, though the two can be combined, as discrimination is perpetuation of trauma. Please stop weaponizing therapy to excuse discrimination against deaf, which is also ableism. To ukulele, I said, using the medical condition of tone deafness as a colloquialism to disapprove of something is by definition ableism. Tone deafness is a medical condition. People also used to put it in the dictionary that deaf people are dumb, and we are still fighting to change that. Ableist people trying to define deaf people as less than doesn't mean you are not discriminating against us. It is just evidence for it. If you are not deaf, please stop. My comment seems to be cut off here, but I'm very positive I had originally said more, and I will pull that up. Please stop. Hold on, let me pull that up. Because I prep screenshots for this reason, just in case something happened with my comments. So to ukulele, I said, the last thing I had said to them is, if you are not deaf, please stop speaking over deaf people and deaf issues as you have no lived experience on deafness. Powder and Paint said she did not use deaf identity as an insult. The term tone deaf does not mean actual deafness. For some reason, my comment here is cut off, so let's see if I have it here. I had said, last comment here, after all of the hearing people trying to negate a deaf person on deaf issues, informing you this is discrimination. This is evidence of how you are normalizing the perpetuation of discrimination against deaf people by not only degrading deaf people in your video, but creating an environment where the audience feels it is socially acceptable to degrade a deaf person in the comments for begging you to stop discriminating against deaf. Let that sink in. And then I said, after I did respond to this, after I left that, and then I edited this one, and I did say, even though it's not showing up for whatever reason, it just puts ... I put edit, turned off notifications, now I am done. And then to Powder and Paint 14, I also said the term tone deaf is not only a medical condition, but all deaf people have tone deafness, and all deaf people who are diagnosed deaf have had our deaf tones measured. You're literally talking about us. Using our identity as a term to degrade others is using deaf identity as an insult. Tone deaf is a medical condition. If you are not deaf, you don't have any lived experience on what it means to be deaf. So yeah, that's what I said. And another thing is, when you notice the gaslighting and notice how they're laughing at the idea of a deaf person being right about deafness and they don't even know. You know what I'm saying? And like, I have my deaf history lesson and the more on my deaf history lesson, as well as the Alexander Graham Bell playlists I have done. It explains the history of all of this. I'm gonna try and remember to link that. I think the description is too full, so I'll probably have to put those playlists in the comments, but I'll try and remember to do that, like a list of the playlists that are relevant to explaining more of this history in detail if you don't understand, because this is one of those things where the short answer is me telling you it's discrimination. That's the short answer. If you want to know the longer, the why, medical condition. If you want to know like the longer of how we got here to where, what is the history that led to now where this is discrimination, that is a longer road. If you don't have that lived experience, you're not going to understand what it's like to experience these issues. The best you can do is know our history, but it's hundreds of years of history. You're not going to learn that quickly. So I have a variety of content related to that. I've got the 1 minute videos, my deaf history lesson videos. Every one of those are 1 minute. The more of my deaf history lesson videos, those time links vary, but they're typically somewhere between 5 and 10, I think. A lot of them are minutes, if I'm not wrong. And so then there are a couple random long ones in there too, though, because I got my live streams and some longer videos mixed in there now. But I think the majority of that playlist is 5 to 10. Um, and then I've got the Alexander Graham Bell. That's a mixed bag of tricks. But the live stream Alexander Graham Bell playlist, those are some longer live streams, but I think they're well worth it if you really want to understand deaf issues. So yeah, I'll link that shit in the description. I mean, not the description. I think the description's too full because I'm gonna need to add timestamps in the comments um, after whenever I'm doing the timestamps. Okay, so now let's just go look at some of the way that tone deafness is used in this video real quick. Um, but before I did that, did I also address how they're like laughing at the idea that I'm right about deafness? They're not deaf. If they are deaf, typically with deaf community, why I don't think they're deaf is I was like saying things like if you're deaf this, if you're not deaf that. In deaf community, when we speak on deaf issues, we typically identify with each other for that we're deaf, hard of hearing, etc. Because we are so used to like hearing people speaking over us that it's important for us to like connect and understand, okay, lived experience on this issue. Now, I also have other videos that explain deafness is not a monolith. A lot of deaf people have a variety of opinions. That doesn't mean a deaf person's wrong. Now, let me give you an example. Many women do not believe that the abortion ban is discrimination against women. I do. And I do believe that women who are all like, I'm a woman, the abortion ban isn't discrimination, are tokenizing themselves. Okay? And so that can happen in the deaf community. That happens across all communities. Now, on one level, I understand with decolonizing, there's ignorance. For example, I am constantly saying racist shit, and I don't want to be racist, but I can't deny the impact of me not knowing better is saying racist shit. For example, I'm part native, but even I have said anti-indigenous, like I said long time no see because I didn't know the origin of it, that it was from making fun of native people. So I'd be saying long time no see all the time, not knowing better. And I just learned that in November 2023, right? So that's part of decolonizing is adjusting your vernacular. Like, so if someone, doesn't feel safe around me because when they met me, I wasn't decolonized enough in my language to where I could have been harmful to them, I understand if they don't feel safe around me because why would you if you don't think someone's doing the work? And how are you supposed to know how much self work someone's doing? Because not everybody's doing that shit, man. A lot of people fucking lie. And then I also understand, like, with language, right? Because we have this history of cultural appropriation of vernacular as well. For example, a lot of the language I grew up learning to use, so a good bit of it turned out to be harmful or cultural appropriation of like African American English, for example, right? And so now over time I have to unlearn, oh, this is something racist to say. This is something that's not my culture to say. This is, XYZ, right? Over time. Um, and so when someone tells me that something discrimination, I have to do the same with ableism. Like I'm still learning like things, and for example, I'm deaf blind, and I'm just now learning about image descriptions for videos and images, and I didn't know better for years. But and then there's like things too, like you can be impacted by oppression, but because you never lived in a life where you had access and you don't know what that's like, it's not until other people are like, yo, bitch, this is what it can be like, that you see or know a different way, right? Um, Things like that. So there's just all of these factors I understand, but I think it's how people respond and the type of environment they cultivate. And I think we can still look at how using normalizing the vernacular can uphold environments where certain associations and um, discrimination against people is tolerated. And I really think this is a case study of that. So first, let's look at, there was something around 4 minutes, I believe. Was the first one here. Yeah. And so let's just do like a quick little like, I'm gonna just do a quick snip playthrough of the times that she discusses tone deafness in this video, and then we'll discuss it a little bit more after. All right, it's choosing to
is, and
load.
it just seems a bit tone deaf.
So I want to highlight that in a lot of these at the beginning, um, she's showing or reading what other people have said in regards to tone deafness. She's not the one saying it until the end. She says it, and I'll show you where she said it before too. Um, I still think that when you're showing people discriminating, it can still be harm. Like there's still an argument. Okay, you didn't say it this time, so you're not the one who said it. But whenever you like let it go and you don't address that hey, that was harmful to say, and then make whatever points, it still does normalize it. It still does create an environment where it's socially acceptable. So I do want to highlight that as well. Because of like the replay and the play issue, we're gonna go again on this one. So this is one where she's just showing someone else.
The more I look into this, the more fishy it is, and it just seems a bit tone deaf. Why respective movies, but it just seems tone deaf given the
serious of the topic matter. It's just so tone deaf. The way that Blake and Colleen Instagram, they said, "Love you, Blake, but you are definitely tone deaf." I agree with that. The promotion reminds me of Jennifer Lopez and her absolute toned deafness. Her toned deafness to what is actually going on.
It's that there's like disgust in her voice when she talks about deaf people, in my opinion.
And how like, I don't know, for me it's just really tone deaf, and it's
So people are arguing, well, she's not talking about a deaf person calling a deaf person tone deaf. She's just using deaf identity to insult others, and they don't think that that's discrimination or that is talking about deaf people, but it is. Only deaf people are tone deaf, have tone deafness. You know what I'm saying? It's a medical condition. Deaf people, we have deaf tones. You don't. At the beginning of this live stream, you may have noticed in the introduction, I show you the audiograms. You may have noticed in the audiogram it says pure tone audiogram. And you may notice that it's labeling and showing you the tones of my deafness. Hey, hey. Wild concept, right? And that's the paper I have to show to get accommodations in any public or anywhere else in life. In life, that's what I have to prove to get accommodated. And so there's just something about my oppressors using the means in which they oppress me to degrade everybody and then claim that's not discrimination. It's just your identity. It's just who you are. But we didn't mean it like that. It's just, and then they're saying, oh, it's laughable. As a, they're continuing to degrade me. I'm saying, hey, you're degrading deaf people, and then they continue to degrade me. And my username is Deaf Child. You come to my profile, it literally talks about me being deaf, hard of hearing. In my bio. Um, and I can show you what my bio currently is real quick. So right here, it says, when my mom found out I was deaf, they asked her about noticing I couldn't hear her. That's the first thing you see when you look at my profile. So, right. And so I just want to discuss the way that she's using deafness. It's not to uplift anyone. If being tone deaf is a good thing, so Why are you associating it with fishy concepts or with people doing harm? Why are you discussing it as if it's a bad thing? It shows to me when people think it's okay to use tone deafness this way, that's to me, you're just saying how you feel about deaf people. And you're comparing deaf people to what you would consider problematic situations when you're the ones oppressing us and discriminating against us is extremely harmful. And then when I didn't say one rude thing. I explained the harm that is being done here. Y'all gonna gaslight me on that and laugh at me? That is normalizing. That shows an environment where it's normalized and upheld to discriminate against deaf people. Look at this. Bam, that's it. All right, so we're done with this video here. And I just want to show you what I did. I went through my comments, but I couldn't make it past November 2023, so we only went through November. But I've been following Ammy, I think, since probably April of 2023, maybe May or so, March or something around that, early 2023. And I know that I've commented about this before, but I want to show first here, this is from April this year, 2024, on the book, and I commented on a video of Ammy Robinson about TikTok exposing Jennifer Lopez for being a mean girl behind the scenes. I said, not me DMing my Border Colin brunch friends like, what the fuck does this dude's mom's bodega order me? And so, yeah, fucking, this video, I'm just showing to say, like, I comment typically, like, I also comment in support on her videos. I also do have a history of just being like, hey, I'm looking forward to this, I'm excited for this. Like, I don't just comment, I'm not just there to, like, shit talk. I am not just there to sit there and criticize or judge anybody. I am literally letting you know the harm and violence you are perpetuating against deaf people is wrong. And it does impact more than just me. And the links that I have in the description of this video, I believe, are an impact of that. And I also want to say, even if I'm the only one speaking out, you should believe. If it doesn't fucking impact you, you should start believing individuals, because that's how we don't become statistics. And the fact that people are like, no, we're just gonna wait until we become a statistics till we stop being oppressive. It's harmful. And that's how oppression is built and continues and is normalized and is perpetuated. All right, so in November 20th, 2023, on a comment, I said, this is when I said, I am deaf. It was very hurtful for me as a deaf person to see use deafness as a slur. I understand if you don't mean malice, but in case you ever catch a deaf person on a wrong day, just keep in mind. And it's one person gaslit me and I said, way to be ableist, and I clapped. So I just want to let you know I've corrected her on this before. And I felt I did so in an appropriate way. And here's where I had corrected her before. On the Colleen Ballinger manipulates audience with rocks, she's after that coin. And I really dislike Colleen Ballinger, so to associate tone deafness with Colleen Ballinger, like that's what you think of tone deaf people? What's the association there? There's none. What? So we're gonna, I'm gonna mute real quick, and then I'm gonna show you the context right here where she says it again. It's loading again. Let's try.
Release this footage, and I just think it's tone deaf to the fact that during this time period, I know that she couldn't care less. It's quite evident.
I don't understand what does tone deafness have to do with anything. Like, the only time deaf people aren't aware of something is if hearing people are discriminating and isolating us and oppressing us. You know what I'm saying? And I already have videos on this. Check my 7-hour live stream on deaf issues video, like, and the 2 links about native hand talk. In the United States, quote unquote, before colonizers came, okay, um, deaf and hearing world was used intertwined. Hearing, deaf, cultural division, and split and ableism is entirely a colonial concept. Native people used to sign. Speech and sign were intertwined. That's how American Sign Language was built, by cultural eradication and assimilation of native signs. You know what I'm saying? And so the ways in which deaf people are oppressed come from taking away our access from sign language. And that was a hearing choice to no longer stop using it based on the Milan Conference of 1880, where it was banned worldwide. And it impacts us all globally. And I literally have a blog on my site called People Who Hear But Don't Listen. I'll link it in the comments after this, by Leonie Hawley. And she's from the UK, on the other side of the world, about 10 years younger than me. Literally saying the exact same shit I'm telling you. So, it impacts all deaf, just so you know. And so on here I said, I'm deaf. Oh, so she replied, so she knows this. She said, apology, that it's figure of speech. I didn't mean any malice. But okay, intention and impact are different. All right? It doesn't matter if you didn't mean it, the impact is still the same. Even if you don't mean discrimination, that doesn't change the impact of it. And now you're aware, and I don't feel that she's trying to change it. If you look at that previous video, we had this discussion. I think continuing to do it, or not at least trying, and I know in my videos, y'all catch me slipping, I catch myself slipping on things that I want to stop doing, but I think I show and I try to discuss how I'm trying to work on not doing this, and I don't like that I do this. I criticize myself for where I need to decolonize, right? And that doesn't excuse the harm of it. People can and should not want to fucking talk to me anymore because I'm not decolonized enough. I think that's reasonable. And I think to judge somebody for calling out discrimination where it is, and Ammy herself didn't do that, but her audience did, and I believe her audience did because that type of behavior is normalized from her. And look, she saw me here, and you saw the way those people talked to me on that first video I showed you, and this person here said, way to be offended, clap. And so I responded, way to be ableist, clap. So Ammy said, apologies, it's commonly used figure of speech here in the UK. I didn't mean malice behind it. And I responded, I understand if you don't mean malice, but in case you ever catch a deaf person on the wrong day, just keep in mind that intention does not change impact. I do appreciate and accept the apology. So, you know, it's used as a figure of speech in America as well, but the etymology is that it's based in normalizing discrimination against deaf people. All deaf people have tone deafness. Plus, our deafness is measured in pure tone audiograms to determine whether or not we were given rights or access in society. Any type of wording or expression that references deafness is from, that's hard to say, is from a history of deaf oppression. I understand many hearing people grow up saying it without knowing how harmful it is, but that doesn't excuse it. The word tone deaf didn't exist until after Alexander Graham Bell created the audiogram, began measuring deaf tones and oppressing deaf people. Then, hearing people started using it as a word to mean someone who had no musical talent or who couldn't understand something. This is all rooted in making fun of deaf people and perpetuating harmful stereotypes about deafness. Part of anti-discrimination and decolonizing is realizing that English language and expression is rooted in oppression. This was written by an 18-year-old at the time, now 20-year-old from the UK, and it's called People Who Hear But Don't Listen. And I linked and I tagged Ammy Robinson. And are you gonna open? There it is. And this is what I was telling you guys about. I'm gonna link this in here. And this is about, from Leonie, and it's called People Hear Don't Listen, and it's about the concept of hearing people dismissing deaf perspective on deaf life. I did an entire reading of this blog in another live stream. I think perhaps in not only another live stream and another video, if I remember correctly. So I don't want to do another reading of it here because I've done so many. Um, so yeah, fucking check that out. Okay. I'm going to link this in the description of the video, and it's literally from Liani's perspective. I need to update this link right here because I just remembered she changed her Instagram handle. Um, so yeah. But this is all about the underlying factors that have fueled the dismissal of the deaf perspective on our own lives. And you know what? I'm gonna just read some highlight, and it's about blatant ignorance towards deaf people, and about how hearing people don't listen to us. And it goes into the concept of it and the history behind why. And it talks about the inherent dismissal of deaf identity by hearing people, and her life has meant she has not had the access to values that would have helped her enormously. She talks about how deaf people don't have access to deaf culture because of hearing oppression against us. And she talks about if nothing else could prove how deaf perspectives are dismissed, then have the knowledge that some members of the deaf community tend to view deafness as a difference in human experience rather than a disability. Um, and that deaf people in the culture usually don't classify ourselves as disabled, but we just think that the way we reconcile it is we're considered disabled by hearing people, and we legally only have rights under disability laws. Um, and so, yeah, and she even talks about how even the people closest to her, how she's grown to realize hear but don't listen. They're not aware of deaf culture at all. Um, and so, yeah, fucking, and then she goes into the key reasons, like why we don't identify as disability. And she starts talking about um, how it's like how we are basically treated historically, socially, culturally, and ethnically different as well as ethically. Um, so yeah, it's a great article. I highly recommend you check it out. And yeah, and let me see if she said it again in here. I think that's the only time she said it in this video. So me and her have had this discussion before, and then what we just watched was, so the video we just watched came out like today. So in my opinion, when you look at her audience and you look at the amount of time she used it today without noticing, it's like, come on, dude, you not care. We had this conversation already. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. And I did not go back further in my Google My Activity. So you can believe me, you cannot believe me. But I feel that if I remember correctly, I've commented this before as well on her videos, even further back. I believe I have. I just didn't find that one. And then another video, and this one's from 2022. I was not watching her at all then. And so, I was not, I didn't see this one at all when it came out. I just saw this one like looking for the other things that I was just showing you. But am I yelling? I feel like I'm yelling. I feel bad for my best friend. For my person. Fucking. Alright, so in this one, there's like a whole timestamp just called Tone Deaf. It's the whole chapter. Maybe it's an auto chapter because actually it doesn't look like she timestamped it unless someone did in the comments. So I think YouTube is contributing to ableism here by auto timestamping this as Tone Deaf if they did. But she said it again here too. And we'll look at that again.
Showing. Didn't I make a YouTube video where I said she was tone deaf? I don't know, but it would not surprise me. It's having $10 for groceries for the week. I've been there, it's not.
So in this video, not only does she say tone deaf, she creates an image where she says your tone deaf is showing. What's wrong with being tone deaf? There's nothing wrong with it. And so deafness has always existed for as long as humans have existed. There's evidence of that, okay? We've always had tone deafness. The way tone deafness came about was from Alexander Graham Bell measuring our deaf tones. It wasn't until after, from a history of you guys discriminating against us, where you decided that our identity, who we are, means it's what also that we are less than. And y'all did it by redefining who we've always, trying to redefine who we've always been as less than. But we're not, okay? That's just you discriminating against us, all right? That's where we need to look at the history. Now I'm speaking you generally, broadly, history hearing people wise, as well as a little bit you with just the specific examples that I'm showing here of Ammy Robinson using the tone deafness in discriminatory ways. Like, what the hell, man? And I do feel that her lack of moderation of the comments and her lack of accountability after her quote unquote apology is just problematic to me. So yeah. From here on out, I'm going to leave this up so I can remember to link this in the comments after the video. The People Who Hear But Don't Listen article by Leonie Holly. She's from the UK. She was 18, like 2021. So, you know, she's getting older. So baby's growing up. Hey. So yeah, fucking. Now we're gonna move into section 2 here, into some articles about tone deafness in general, some sources on that, so from other parties, so you can see it's not just me who feels this way. And after that, we're gonna close out this live stream with just a replay of a lot of the content I've done before, but except for one of the videos, I'm not gonna replay all of that. I'm just gonna show you guys. I'm gonna explain to you guys how it's why I would recommend you going and watch it, because it's a long one, so I'm not gonna make us sit through that in this live stream too, because that would double it up. All right, but anyway, so from self-defined, we have a definition of tone deaf, and it's a neurological disorder that can be congenital from birth or acquired due comorbidity or injury that results in the inability to differentiate speech, loss of ability to sing or produce pitch, or other disassociations with music like rhythm, colloquially when something is insensitive or poorly thought through. It's the colloquial definition that is discriminatory. And the colloquial definition evolved through discrimination. It is rooted in our medical condition and way of being and way of life. Okay? Now, all deaf people, to be diagnosed as deaf or hard of hearing, it is because you have an inability to differentiate speech by definition. If you can differentiate speech, you are not considered either deaf or hard of hearing. Tone deafness is relevant to all deaf people. Now, some people have different types of deafness. They may not have a deaf identity. They may not have a hard of hearing identity based on their level of deafness. So because of hearing cultural assimilation, they may not have a deaf identity, but culturally, deaf community-wise, they're still considered deaf, and many deaf will consider them deaf. They are deaf to us. It's in the name. You're not tone deaf unless you have deafness. Okay? So the reasons people who are like even people who are hard of hearing some hard of hearing people don't identify as deaf at all. Some hard of hearing people I do identify as deaf. I identify as deaf. I'm hard of hearing. And that's a whole nother thing. We're gonna have to do a whole nother live stream on that. I've already done a 7-hour one on deaf identity, so you can go watch that if you want to. I'll try to shorten it though. but me trying to roughly let you know, like, the reason any deaf person doesn't identify as deaf when they are deaf comes from forced hearing cultural assimilation history. And my deaf history lesson playlist and the Alexander Graham playlist and all those damn playlists explain that shit for real, man. So yeah, the self-defined app talks about how their appropriate usage is referring to medical condition as described above. The inappropriate usage is as a literary metaphor for insensitive or negligent issues. Connoting negligence with a medical disorder implies that actions we can control, bad choices, are the same as actions that cannot necessarily be controlled. Deafness. It reinforces the discriminatory idea that disability is bad. Impact. Using the word tone deaf reinforces the idea that deaf and or non-speaking nonverbal people are somehow less than, and that disability is bad. By using ableist language, we are perpetuating violence against people who experience mental or psychological disabilities. Using this language perpetuates those systems and language of harm, regardless of our intent. So, keep in mind, these people are discriminating against me. They're perpetuating violence against me. And I'm asking them as nicely as possible, begging them to stop. And they're treating me like shit, man. And then they're trying to claim that they're not being harmful or discriminating? Are you kidding me? Did you not just pay attention to what happened, or do you not care about deaf people? Which is it? Are you shitting me? You know what I mean? So yeah. From Northwestern Education, we have disability language blurb here. And it talks about how within the disability community, people with the same disability often hold intersecting views of their disability as well as identities across race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, religion, and more. Identities can also be shaped by regional, environmental, and generational differences, resulting in different perspectives and preferences related to their disability. All these factors reinforce the common guidance throughout this guide. The most essential guideline is to use language that is preferred by the individual. Avoid ableist language. The National Conference for Community and Justice defines ableism as the intentional or unintentional discrimination or oppression of individuals with disability. So keep in mind, whether or not the discrimination is intentional or unintentional, it's still ableism. Okie dokie? While it's often used without meaning harm, it's important to be aware and sensitive to the fact that ableist language devalues disability. When writing or speaking in a conversational tone, this language needs to emerge in everyday language and as figures of speech. I said needs, but it says tends. I was thinking of how it needs to change, and I accidentally said what I was thinking. Okay, this language tends to emerge in everyday language and as figures of speech. Below are some examples and some alternative suggestions. And in this example of ableist language and alternatives, they include tone deaf. Okie dokie. So, from DIY MFA, they have an article here about mind your words, finding alternatives to replace ableist language. So, ableist language is defined as words and phrases by dictionary.com that devalue disabled people by using disability language or historical descriptions of disabilities as an insult. In addition to this, the definition continues to include the way you speak about people with disabilities, treating it as something to be pitied or disabled people as inspirational when they overcome a disability. But you might ask, what if I didn't mean it as an insult? The thing is, just because you might not be aware of how the word is an insult to the disabled population, that doesn't mean it isn't still potentially harmful and perpetuating these negative stereotypes. So, yeah. And then this one also has alternative words or phrases to replace some common ableist language and phrases. And they include number 3, tone deaf. Hey! From the University of Minnesota, we have how to identify and avoid ableist exclusive language. Now, ableism is discrimination or prejudice against individuals with disabilities. many alternative words that can help you be more expressive in your writing while avoiding ableist language. And they link to a blog post with an extensive list of ableist terms and their alternatives. A couple of examples are tone deaf. Instead, use insensitive or out of context. Right? So, boop. Words matter. Disability language etiquette. Why is disability language etiquette important? This is especially important in education, where all students need to be safe and respected in order to flourish academically and socially. If you want your audience to feel safe and respected to flourish socially with your community, wouldn't you want to not discriminate against them? I'm just saying. It can be difficult to recognize language that is ableist and offensive. There are numerous expressions and words that are part of everyday language, and we don't think twice about using them, which actually reinforces negative stereotypes, dehumanizes, and stigmatizes individuals with disabilities. And they use tone deaf as an example here. It is allies' responsibility to learn and practice anti-ableist language, the ways we speak to or about people with disabilities. The burden is on allies to relearn language practices rather than on people with disabilities to accept ableist language use. Here from, is this Moki? I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce this word, and I feel ignorant, but I am here. So, I think it's pronounced mochi. Mochi? Mochi. Mochi sounds better. It's Mochi magazine, right? It's called, what the, dude, it is Mochi. I'm stupid. Look, I'm ignorant. All right. But not about deafness, just about Asian concepts, okay? I'm not Asian. What the term, not thinking of ways I might have been racist in the past. Okay, so what the term tone deaf means to deaf Asian Americans. Asian Americans tell their stories of growing up deaf, how the phrase tone deaf is harmful, and how the hearing community can support deaf and hard of hearing Asian Americans. So, yeah. When you're using tone deaf to describe something as insensitive, Layla Hanami said, I'm so sorry, I don't think I said your name right. I'm so sorry. You are associating deaf people with that label, however unintentional that may have been. The negative connotation behind the phrase perpetuates the idea among hearing individuals that deafness is inherently bad and is especially harmful when some people in the deaf community have a hard time accepting their identity in a society that is hearing-centered. And this other person wishes hearing people would stop using the term to label ignorant, oblivious behavior. Layla Hanami. I'm ignorant and oblivious to how to say your last name. I am so sorry. Layla. Okay. From the University of Utah, we have a little article here called People with Disabilities. And it talks about how when writing about anyone with a disability, whether physical, intellectual, or psychological, emotional, there are two types of languages that can be used: people first or identity first. Identity first language means positioning the disability first. For many people, disability is a primary aspect of their identity and lived experience. It refers not only to bodily or mental impairment or difference, but also to the profoundly, I feel like impairment, in my opinion, I don't like that, but also is ableism. But you know what, let's keep going. It's also the profoundly shaping experience of living in ableist society. For this reason, some disabled people prefer identity first language, both claiming disability as central to their sense of self and calling attention to the disadvantages imposed by an ableist world. And then it talks about avoiding ableist language. And it says ableism is discrimination or prejudice in favor of people without disabilities. Many phrases that were meant to denigrate people with disabilities in the past have become surprisingly common today. Using ableist language causes us to internalize biases about disability. Be conscious of the language that you use and avoid using ableist language, including tone deaf. From popsugar.com, we have a article here about 12 common words and phrases you may not realize are ableist. And number one here is tone deaf. It says, as with many ableist phrases, tone deaf is problematic because it uses a disability as a negative descriptor. Usually, when someone uses the phrase tone deaf, they mean someone or something didn't read the room well, or that an action or remark was inappropriate for the situation. It's important that we stop linking deafness with ignorance because these types of misconceptions are harmful to the deaf community. And it's really funny because usually the hearing person using tone deaf in a discriminatory way is what they're trying to call whoever they are calling tone deaf. You know what I'm saying? They're usually they're usually how they're trying to they're the ones that are perpetuating harm typically. Usually when people use tone deafness, they're trying to accuse someone else of being harmful, but they're the ones doing it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's hard for me to speak and process. I feel like I didn't say that right. But I think you know what I meant or what I'm trying to say, right? Whatever. I tried. That is part of my language disfluency. I'm gonna need to do a whole nother article on that, on language deprivation and speech and language disfluency. Because man, it's really been impacting me, especially after my work day today. Okie dokie. From the BBC.com, we have the harmful ableist language you unknowingly use. Oh my god, I love following Sarah Novick. She's an author. She's awesome. She's deaf. Fucking, and it talks about some of our most common ingrained expressions have damaging effects on millions of people, and many of us don't know we're hurting others when we speak. So yeah, and she talks about the ableist language being omnipresent in conversation, but how for disabled people like us, these common words are like micro assaults. And it even provides evidence that most people associate deafness with willful ignorance, even if they consciously may not. It's a subconscious, for real. And so this just backs up, I'm not the only one who feels when people say that they're really feel that way. Disabled people experience this widespread discrimination at nearly every level of society. This phenomenon, known as ableism, discrimination based on disability, can take on various forms. Personal ableism might look like name-calling or committing violence against a disabled person, while systemic ableism refers to the inequity disabled people experience as a result of laws and policy. But ableism can also be indirect, even unintentional, in the form of linguistic microaggressions. Using language that equates disability to something negative can be problematic in several ways. First, these words give an inaccurate picture of what being disabled actually means. To describe someone as crippled by something is to say that they are limited or trapped, perhaps, but those aren't how the person quoted here, whose name is Hale, feels. That's not how he experiences his being. If ableist language is so harmful, why is it so common? Ableist language as colloquialism functions like any other slang term. People repeat it because they've heard others say it, a mimicry that on its face suggests use is undiscerning. Anyone can create slang term, but the expression will only gain currency according to the unanimity of attitude within the group. This suggests ableist slang is ubiquitous because on some levels the speakers believe it to be true. It's possible for individuals to be truly unconscious of these biases within themselves and unaware of the ableism couched in their own everyday sayings. But the fact is Discussions about the negative effect of a word such as dumb, a term originally denoting a deaf person who did not use speech but which now functions as slang for something brutish, uninteresting, or of low intelligence, have been happening in deaf and disabled circles for centuries. Ableist language encourages a culture of separation. It defines, excludes, and marginalizes people. This allows non-disabled people to be bystanders in the face of ableist culture and infrastructure at large. Although these words and phrases are obviously harmful to the groups they marginalize, non-disabled people who casually use ableist language may negatively be impacting themselves too. Because later in life, what happens to you whenever you transition to the disabled community, if you do? The ableist language that you've used have now created an oppressive environment for you too. And then they say, given how ingrained ableism is in our society, rooting it out may seem an overwhelming task. Being aware of the words you use each day is a necessary step in the process. Dismantling disableist structures doesn't start with language, but building a world without them requires that we change our language, says Hale. Examining your own go-to phrases and attempting to replace them is a good start. Think about what you mean. Don't just repeat a phrase because you've heard it. Think about what you're trying to convey. Language is ever changing, so eliminating ableism from your vocabulary will be an ongoing process rather than a static victory. You may stumble, but checking in with disabled people is an effective way to find your footing and continuing to build a more inclusive vocabulary. My advice is always to listen, ask questions, and this is from someone named Tim. Ask questions, avoid assumptions, and start by listening to the people who are impacted the most. Think about whether your own word choice is contributing to their oppression. And it's like, if it doesn't impact you, why are you arguing with someone who it does? And we just have a thread here from someone named Hello It's V from July 2024 saying, just a reminder that the phrase tone deaf is very much ableism. Someone said, so true, named Amalicia Smith. Lacking compassion or something like that is a great alternative. From the Word Factory, we have an article here called Writing Tip, Avoid Ableist Language. And it talks about why ableist language is harmful. Ableism is the belief that typical abilities, those of people who aren't disabled, are superior. Ableism is a concept similar to racism, sexism, and ageism in that it includes stereotypes, generalizations, and demeaning views in language. I have some personal experience with this. I don't. Well, I mean, I do on some of that, but not all of that. But hold on, I'm reading. Besides my own few weeks in the boot, I was a family caregiver to a person with chronic mental illness. Calling someone crazy or saying they're off their meds in casual conversation landed differently once mental illness was part of my daily life. The slangy use suddenly began to feel wrong, and I started working with more patients of our healthcare clients. I learned how they wanted to be referenced and how ableist language hurt them. I realized the bias and stigma that language reveals. Thank you. There we go. And then they talk about ableist terms to avoid, and they include tone deaf. And it says, it's an ongoing process and I'm still catching myself making mistakes. If those mistakes are public, I own the error. Thank you, the person who pointed it out. Apologize and vow to do better. Then I try to do better. You can too. And that's what we're looking for. However, if you're not following through and trying to do better, then it kind of looks like it's empty apologies, right? And when you allow others to gaslight deaf person, when you allow hearing people to gaslight the deaf person on deafness, that is always problematic in my opinion. And for anyone watching my videos, if anybody tries to have a conversation with me about anti-discrimination and you go attack them, you're getting fucking blocked from my fucking page. So we have another article here call from Medium said, please stop calling people tone deaf when they make offensive or insensitive comments. And it says, I'm actually tone deaf, and I promise you, I'm neither offensive or nor insensitive. So please just stop. Okay. I'm not going to be able to read the full story. I'm not going to create an account for this, but let's just check out the beginning of what they say. She says, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're ableist. That's right. If you've ever used the idiom tone deaf to describe something daft, then you've insulted an entire group of people. I didn't choose to be musically tone deaf. God just forgot to give me the ability to hear pitch. So yeah. Tips for avoiding ableist language and terms from indiespace.org. And it says there are certain words and phrases that are commonly used or are not inclusive to all members of our community. They're sharing this resource as something that they continue to work on and stay mindful of. Everyone, has used some of these phrases from time to time, and they're always working to be more inclusive and respectful to everyone in our community. In here, they have specific phrases, and they use tone deaf in here. And they say these terms are used to describe negative actions by using someone else's disability. When discussing the need to update and refine language choices or cultural practices, some individuals complain about having to make adjustments. While we see fewer of these complaints in their community, some may express frustration and complain that these steps to reduce the use of ableist terms are overly politically correct. Avoiding these types of words and phrases is showing people respect. The words we use and what they mean are constantly evolving. It's one of the beautiful aspects of language. Just as we have stopped using certain words that have been racist, homophobic, or sexist, we have the opportunity to stop using words that stigmatize and dehumanize people. I have an article also that's linked here called ableism. And it's about how disabled people are heavily discriminated against through the use of words, social cues, and nuances. Deaf people did not even have rights covered by the American with Disabilities Act until the 1990s, and even now it is hard to enforce or regulate. Deaf people don't have access to resources because of ableism. Why do people think it is acceptable to use disabilities as insults? Why doesn't language matter to others? Jokes, euphemisms, and metaphors underlie the way society treats each other. Language should matter to anyone who gives a fuck about themselves or others and how they are treated. The concept of discrimination is hard for people to understand when they haven't been discriminated against themselves the way they discriminate against others. None of the isms can be compared to another, for they are all different experiences, but the discrimination that allows all isms is the same, and that starts with words. And it's about enableism. Noun, the enablement of discrimination against disabled people. So yeah. From Disability in Kid Lit, we have an introduction to disability terminology blurb here. And it just discusses how language is complicated and related to marginalized groups even more so, and how using the wrong terms do cause individual harm and perpetuate oppression on a larger scale. It also talks about ableist language. How does this show up in everyday use? And it gives several examples, including just the general concept of deafness. So yeah. When it comes to discussing disability as a metaphor, it says oftentimes terms related to disability are used in a metaphorical sense. Consider phrases like this: tone deaf in terms of conversational tone. Some disabled people don't mind the above terms at all and may use them themselves, while others have a significant problem with them. As I said, we're not a monolith. They may feel that it's tacky or even appropriative use to use the disabled experience as a simple metaphorical tool, or point out that these phrases are often used in a disparaging or stereotypical way. In other words, like many of the terms in this article, it's highly individual. However, we feel it's important to list that the authors are at least aware of how their words may be received, as some may wish to pause and consider whether alternative phrases exist. And my opinion is, just because other people who experience that form of discrimination or disability don't think something is discrimination doesn't mean that it's not discrimination. If any amount of someone who experiences a form of oppression, are letting you know that something is discrimination, I do believe it's tokenizing other marginalized people to use other people to then perpetuate harm against someone else. And if you're not part of a community, you can't decide what is or isn't discrimination against that community, in my opinion. So, yeah. From here on out in this next section, I'm gonna skip whenever we get to the second to last video. I'm gonna just talk about it. I don't think I might play part of it if I just manically decide to do so, but I think I'm just gonna talk to you guys about why I think you should go watch this one video. But other than that, right now I'm about to just play a bunch of previous content that I've already created on these concepts. And like I said in the intro, I am playing this out of context from the original situations on which they came. So if you want more background on those original situations, in the description of this video, I've linked each video we're watching, and if you go check those links out, then in the description of those videos, if that's not the first one of it, I have where it came from there. So yeah, fucking I'm gonna start playing this content now. The first one, yeah, I'm out of it. I'm just gonna shut up and hit play. I don't know what's wrong with me. I've had a long day at work, and now I just kind of feel like my brain is just like, and I think I've said this before. It's just like kind of how I feel when I start mentally crashing a bit. But I just feel like this past content I've done, like if you just watch it and let it sit, and if you process the sources I've shown you, and if you process what happened at the beginning, and if you just kind of process me talking about these concepts in other different situations, I think you'll see why I'm so exasperated now, and why I'm so exhausted, and why I'm so frustrated, and why it's just so harmful, and how the harm continues to build and build and build when it doesn't change. And so these are examples of discussing ableism regarding hearsplaining, hearing people trying to speak over deaf people and deafness, as well as the concept of tone deaf or ableism and AUDISM against deaf people. So yeah, fucking all right, let's do this, bitch.
I'm gonna try not to talk too much on this because this comment really pisses me off, especially how the commentator was approaching me. There's just a lot wrong here. Their comment said, saying tone deaf is a slur implies that deaf is a slur, and it's not. It's a medical condition as disabled person with a hearing impaired parent. First of all, both tone deaf and hearing impaired are both deaf slurs. Second of all, me asking you to not use my deafness as a slur doesn't mean that deafness itself is a slur. It means I'm asking you not to discriminate against me. And you tell me that I'm implying that my own identity is a slur if I'm asking you not to use it as one is just hypocritical. It kind of screams reverse ableism when that doesn't exist. Third, if you're not deaf, you don't get to decide what is or isn't a slur for deaf people. This is a deaf community issue, okay? Now, deaf people are not a monolith, so when I say deaf people feel a certain way, I'm going to heavily generalize about deaf people. Not all deaf people feel the same way about me, but enough deaf people feel the same way about me to where, it is a community issue. It's well known that it's a concept in a community that we do not like. Please pause and read this little article from the Seattle Times on using tone deafness, particularly the highlighted part. I am also queer. I'm bisexual, pansexual, very open sexually, so I feel like I could use this next metaphor. Do you remember about 20 years ago, it was very common to use gay as a slur? Someone said that if they didn't want to do something, they'd be like, no, that's gay, something like that. But being gay itself isn't a slur, but the usage of it could be if someone's using it in a derogatory way. Similar thing happens with deafness. Being deaf itself isn't a slur, but when you use our deafness to demean others, that's when you use our identity as a slur, and that's extremely problematic. There are many, many reasons why I do not like hearing impaired, but let's just say it began being seen as politically correct because before they called us hearing impaired, they would call us deaf and dumb. They would call us dumb. So they went from calling us dumb to broken, okay? And we're done with that. We're not dumb, we're not broken, we're just deaf. We're deaf, hard of hearing, deaf. Every deaf person has their own identity, and I wouldn't tell another deaf person how to identify, but I will tell hearing people how not to discuss me to me. Last but not least, your proximity to a deaf person doesn't make you deaf, doesn't mean you can speak over me about deaf issues, okay? That's like a cis-het man trying to tell me what my own period is like when I'm on my own fucking period. You don't know what it's like. I saw this comment last night. When I saw this, I got really, really mad, and I made 2 videos about it. The comment says so many words, but literally nothing of substance, and they said they can justify what they're saying by appropriating friends, family, and then in comment 2, they say, because, that was comment 1, they say, friends, family, and their work. Then they tell me that I'm wrong with no views. And this is a comment about deaf access in society. They are saying I'm saying a whole lot of nothing about a video I made. Well, 2 videos I made with 20 sources about deaf access in society. So why am I not posting the videos I made last night when I was mad? I am making some new videos instead. This is from Talking with Unique, the deaf dancer, aka Brandy Mims, because at this point we try to educate her. Me and a few other deaf people online, we tried. So now what is talking to her gonna do? It's only making me mad. So Brandy told me to just block her. So why am I making a video in sign language when I'm not fully fluent. Because this entire argument I'm having with this commenter is about access in society for deaf people. And today I, went live. I'm actually not sure if this is the right sign for like live videos, like if it's just live, but I'm using it and deaf people will know what I mean, but hearing people don't look at me for learning sign language. But me and Brandy, both of us are deaf. We're talking online and we are talking and signing at the same time. And I was like really thinking about in that conversation, like how our communication relied on knowing what each other was, trying to say. Signs, like, on some levels, you can do, gesture. Like, that is part of sign language, and it will, make sense, like, but often, like most of the time, you need like actual like vocabulary. You need like, there's like a structure, you need like meaning for the words. It's like if I just, start speaking in gibberish, do you know what I'm saying? If a baby is going goo, goo, gaga, do you know like what they're saying? Like when they're babbling? Different conversation to have though is, you can learn and teach, with a baby sign language and start communicating like way before you can speaking. Just saying. Back on topic. Thinking that you can, dismiss or like ignore the problems that we deaf, go through with accurate sign language representation is a big problem. In my deaf history lesson 23, I talk about how people don't believe people who are considered disabled or deaf. Deaf people are socially included in that. In the two videos I did on, cultural appropriation, I did one on gatekeeping in society and one on access in society about deaf people in sign language. I listed 20 sources for information about deafness and how sign language has been shown wrong in the past and how that impacts deaf people. I also discussed the ways that hearing people have stopped deaf people from signing and why so many deaf people grow up not learning sign language. So for a commenter to tell me that all of that is a whole lot of nothing, it's extremely hurtful. Because without sign, deaf people don't have access like hearing people. At this point, hearing people only mostly hurt deaf access with controlling sign language. The only way for deaf people to have access is for hearing people to start to listen to deaf people. I think I wanna make one more video about this on the second comment. Then I'm just gonna talk because they don't wanna learn. What's the point? And why do hearing people always wanna comment on a language they don't even know, about a life they don't even live? Yeah, there's gonna be a part 2. This is part 2 of discussing how a hearing person told me that my labor on discussing deaf representation with them meant nothing, and that they justify cultural appropriation from. I actually don't understand that point, but they said they justify cultural appropriation from my argument that cultural appropriation is harmful. So I actually don't understand. I don't understand that. But then they told me that they work with like recognized organizations. So do I. I think a lot of people who work in general do. Like, I don't understand that comment either. And then they said, have your opinion to me and run with it, and stay wrong and unviewed on TikTok. Okay, well, there's a lot to address here. So first, I want to thank Brandy Mims, aka Unique, the deaf dancer. She helped me change my perspective from being like really angry about this to just, kind of like appreciating how I can make some content about this and think and just process my own experience. At the time of making this video, this commenter has less followers than me. So I don't understand like the unviewed part, because I have more views, more interaction and everything than they do. And not that I think that matters, because I, don't want to grow like mainstreamed in a way that does not serve me. I like that, my followers are like a niche, audience. Like, I have a community that supports me. But also, if you're hearing, how do you know what's right or wrong about being deaf? Why do hearing people always want to tell deaf people that they are wrong? It doesn't matter who you work for, who your friends are, who your family is. If you're not deaf, you'll never understand what it's like, So this is, definitely a discussion you should be having with your deaf friends and your deaf family members. So what is she telling me I'm wrong about? I'm not wrong about deaf culture. I'm not wrong about needing accurate sign language representation. I'm not wrong about hearing people passing laws about sign language, deaf people, and more. I'm not wrong about how bad or fake sign language hurts us. One of many sources I showed you showed how it takes years for people to become fluent signers. Part of that study showed how 50% of interpreters were wrong. And those are people who they practice and they study for years. They learn for years. And here's another thing. I'm not even necessarily sharing my opinions about this. I have only shared facts, the truth. Everything that I have discussed, I provided sources for that you can see on my YouTube. But y'all, if you made it this far, I'm not even mad anymore. Like, for real, because I'm actually like really, really, really happy today. I had a wonderful conversation with Brandy this morning. And White Woman Whisperer started following me on TikTok. White Woman Whisperer is amazing. I feel like deaf community needs to make some signs for people like White Woman Whisperer, Portia, Imani, Ren. We need to make them sign names. Like they're honorary deaf community. Okay, I'm making that decision. So you know what? I'm gonna think about some sign names that I think that we could use for them. So, and I don't ever want to get too big, and I'm gonna tell you why. And it's like a little bit of trauma dumping. So, trigger warning, SA. I was assaulted inside my music community in New Orleans. And that was like everything I had built my business on, my life on, my friendships on, my family. I have had problems with my family for a long time now. The last straw was the SA. And I was in a local dance team and Mardi Gras crew. So I'm talking about 1,000 people here. My entire following and community supported my. And so since then, I have been trying to rebuild. So for me, value alignment is more important than anything else. Because when you are deaf, there's not many places you can go and have access. Everywhere is hearing controlled. Hearing people telling deaf people they're wrong about deafness literally proves my point about ableism. So thank you for proving my point. So this commenter told me that in my thread, Holly spoke to one person, not me. How is that discriminating against me? I'm not sure if they were referring to the Reddit thread I was talking about or to the TikTok thread on my video that Holly commented on. If they're talking about the Reddit thread, then they are admitting that Rose is supporting vernacular, and they are commenting and engaging with to support a discussion where people are telling me that I, as a deaf person, if I ask hearing people not to comment on deaf issues, I'm discriminating against hearing people, which does not exist. And those screenshots are in Jail Program Part 10. And they also told me that if I was saying deaf people only on deaf issues, I'm excluding hard of hearing people. I'm hard of hearing myself and I identify as deaf. I never mean to exclude hard of hearing people when I say deaf. I just use deaf as an umbrella term for all deaf, hard of hearing, and late deaf people. Now, if she is referring to the comments on Jello Program reporting 10 and 11, where those comments came from, that was the video called "The ADA Could Be Gutted, but Deaf People Are Too Busy Arguing to Give a Fuck." In that video, I specifically stated I do not want hearing opinions on these deaf issues, and that any hearing comments may be subject to ridicule or removal. By commenting on my post, and she left 2 comments on my post telling 2 deaf people to message her, a hearing person, about my video. So she commented twice, violating my consent twice, wherein I asked hearing people not to speak over deaf on deafness. That itself is discrimination, and I explained that in Jello Program Reporting Part 10. And in Jello Program Reporting Part 11, I specifically state a hearing person is not going to have any additional commentary on a deaf issue that is more important or negates a deaf person's lived experience. Now, I don't like you. I don't feel comfortable around you, so I'm going to go ahead and hit that blockity block button and peace. Oh, and part of the reason I do that is not only for my own mental health, to protect my mind, but also to prevent the algorithm from putting me around places to be engaged with people like this. No, thank you. As I discussed in my last video, about to reply to you, Wild Egg. There is so much information that I do not have the data storage space to share it all with you. There are others in a group chat I'm in who have also witnessed this, and if they would like to jump in on this conversation, they may, but I'm not going to stress them out any more than they are already stressed, because we've all been going through shit lately. So right now you're just gonna have to take me for my lived experience, or like you can take me up on my offer to access those messages in another form, either or. I'm not going off of anybody's hearsay. I'm going off of my own lived experience and what I saw myself and engaged with in discussion myself. We do not know who a lot of the people on that Reddit are because they were commenting behind aliases and created new accounts. We have reason to believe, which is why I stated allegedly in my last video, that Lonely Nerve is either Mary Beth or Holly. And the reason we believe this is because the comments that Lonely Nerve were stating were echoing directly other comments that we can show you that Holly and Mary Beth have made to either me or Tom or Christina or Candy or any of the other people involved, or even Moomy Star. So, I'm not going off of anybody's hearsay. I'm telling you what the fuck I saw and experienced for myself, and I am so tired of debating my lived experiences with you. That's what I discussed in my last video. I'm tired of you questioning me on my own reality. That is the definition of gaslighting. And I really want you to examine yourself here. You are here defending and trying to debate with me on whether or not it's okay for hearing people to either say or support the idea of saying that if a deaf person says they do not want hearing input on deaf issues, they are discriminating against hearing people. And discrimination against hearing people does not exist. And quite frankly, the fact that you're choosing to harp on me on questioning my lived experience instead of questioning discrimination and the culture that it is perpetuated by, because it's just alarming to me, because regardless of your semantics on what you're questioning, the overall culture that this person is involved in is not up for debate. Those are facts. That is a reality. Now, I did engage directly with these people, and I showed evidence of that already. I don't need to go and further engage with anybody more to question them as to their choices, if that's what you're asking me. Because you said, have you tried speaking to Holly directly, or are you just going off someone's hearsay? I have spoken, with these people in that subreddit, and I have addressed the comments directly to Holly in video replies. I did block her after because her opinion is not relevant in any shape or form. So you're basically, I don't know if you're asking me, like, why do I not want hearing input on deaf issues? Because hearing people do not have the lived experience of deaf people. So she has no understanding of what is or isn't ableism or audism. And I'm kind of disappointed, really extremely shocked at you and disappointed in you for suggesting that a deaf person needs a hearing person's input on discrimination against them. Because to me, that is extremely oppressive. And if we're always going to be like, oh, well, we have to check with the hearing person first if we're being discriminated against, we're never going to move forward in our social progress. So no, I do not feel the need to confer with hearing people on my own discrimination, because they're never going to admit it. That is called tokenization, and I'm not a token. I'm not about to token myself. If you want to do that, if you want to be a token, you continue to be a token. When I see this person is trolling, I'm going to address this comment, and then I'm going to address the comment because I just still feel like, I'm going to say my piece on this point because I think it's important to address. But I'm going to block because I don't want the algorithm to continue reaching people like this person. And I don't want for my mental health to continue dealing with them. Now, a deaf person asking a hearing person not to talk over them on deaf issues is not negating their experience. So, in Java Program Reporting Part 10, I show you guys the difference with sources between fact and opinion. Lived experience is fact, not opinion. Hearing people have no deaf experience. Therefore, they cannot be negated on a deaf experience because you can't negate an experience you do not have. Only deaf people know what it's like to be deaf. So when a hearing person thinks that they know as much about deafness as a deaf person, or that they understand a situation like a deaf person would, just because they, think they observed it, it doesn't mean necessarily that they have the experience to understand what happened, like a deaf person does. So when you try to use an opinion to either say it's an equal argument to, or it negates the lived experience of someone who actually experienced something, that is when you're negating their experience. But when you're correcting someone and you're saying, hey, I'm the one that lived this life and you've never experienced it before, that's not negating your experience. If you have never, ever, ever climbed a mountain before, ever, and I say, hey, if you've never climbed a mountain before, you're not going to want to climb Mount Everest for your first mountain. That is for people who are really experienced with hiking only. And then you tell me I'm negating your lived experience. It's like the same thing in a way without the ableism. That in that form, there's typically only there's different forms of discrimination involved in all of that. But whatever, different story. I'm getting off the rails. And for me, when a hearing person feels invalidated by a deaf person saying, hey, you don't know what it's like to be deaf, you're just kind of telling on yourself in a way by thinking that you are so superior that you know what it's like to be deaf. You know what I mean? They're not a real deaf person. Also, a hearing person telling the deaf person that they're not a real deaf person is a big fucking issue. You get so offended when I suggest that you're not qualified to interpret if you're not certified, but you think you can disqualify people's deafness based on your discrimination of them? That's interesting. In regards to the idea that hearing people need to be certified to interpret for deaf people, that also doesn't apply within the social constructs we currently live in. I mean, it does apply, but the ideology of my vision for certification would also extend with the idea that certification should be free to get. So also, when you negate a deaf person's ideas on what is accessible for the deaf because we are limited within our current confines of capitalism, you're therefore hindering social progress and is part of what's keeping us back, because you're only thinking about how to conform to the society that currently exists rather than looking at how to change it or make it better. But personally, I really think that a hearing interpreter telling me, a deaf person, that I'm not don't experience as much deafness as other deaf people really is just kind of like going up to a woman who has breast cancer and telling her she's not as much of a woman as other women without her boobs. And as discussed before and provided evidence with sources, there's a difference between fact and opinion, and lived experience is fact versus your personal bias against deaf people is only an opinion. When I discuss my opinion from the facts of my lived experience, that's completely different than a deaf person having to deal with prejudicial bias of discrimination in the form of opinions of hearing people. And I've been saying I don't want hearing people to comment on this issue because of my triggers and my mental health. I just want to discuss it with deaf people. So for you, a hearing person to violate my consent in that way is discrimination. For an interpreter to mock, troll, and discriminate against deaf people like this is extremely triggering, because you are what's wrong with the world to me. I am so blessed I do not have to deal with this person in real life. And yeah, I've learned a lot about how people really are. And I'm really grateful for seeing these people's true colors, so I may stay away from them. Someone told me to show us and explain how did she discriminate you. Please try to make a short video, just short and sweet. Thank you in advance. I have done 17 videos on this that you may go watch in order to educate yourself. You need to put labor into something before you ask somebody to work for you for free. I do not work for free, so if you want me to make a video at your request, you do need to pay me, okay? Otherwise, I don't make videos at your request. Whatever comes out of me, comes out of me. I put a lot of work into editing these videos because you have to caption them as well, and that takes a lot of work, especially with everything we have to put inside of it. So you telling me just short and sweet, thanks in advance, that doesn't sound genuine. It sounds like you are basically degrading my labor and devaluing my labor as a deaf person. And that comes down to deaf issues and discrimination against the deaf and people constantly devaluing deaf labor when I've already done all of this work for you and now you're asking me for more free work. At this point, it is a long story. So you're telling me make a long story short, but I cannot. Either you pay attention to the whole story or you mind your business because you don't want to pay attention. After participating in a subreddit thread where I can prove that Rosewater was there, aka Holly, I discussed in that thread I only wanted deaf opinions on deaf issues. Then when I made a video, and I discussed on that video, only deaf people to comment on this video. And I said if any hearing person comments, they will be ridiculed. Holly chose to comment on that video. And so I made some replies regarding her discrimination. She did not need to comment on those videos. She did that so I would know to get my attention. She and I are not connected. She was not my friend. She's not commenting on my videos like that. So when she comments to people on my video, she could have messaged them privately. She could have commented on their pages if she wanted to talk to them privately. But she wanted me to know she wanted to talk to them about me. And she chose to comment on the video where I said, no hearing people to comment on this video. After being in the subreddit where they told me I was discriminating against hearing people if I don't want hearing people to talk on deaf issues. That is discrimination against me. You're not welcome because you gaslit me. So, Holly has time to act superior and imply that her lived experience as a hearing person is equal to a deaf person's on deafness, but that's not true. That is discrimination. And if you want to disagree, like, oh, hearing people know as much as about deafness as deaf people, and it's not discrimination for a hearing person to tell a deaf person, you know, that they're going to talk over them when they ask not to and stuff like that, then, you know, you and I got problems. I think this community is extremely problematic that has been called out. I'm really happy I was never really involved in that community beyond asking them to stop attacking people, you know. And I'm definitely going to continue trying to stay far away from that side of the community because, you know, their idea of advocacy is to go after deaf people's income, is to try and take deaf people's access in society away, is to bully deaf people and harass deaf people. It's not okay. It's not okay. And me just talking about that isn't doing the same to you as what you did to me, because here's the thing, me just discussing my opinion on a TikTok video where I'm discussing a public figure with public information that's available is completely different than you doing things that dox people and attack them in the real life and threaten them in the real world. And you guys encouraging discrimination against me and defending it and gaslighting me on it is not okay. And then trying to police me with my message telling me basically to shut up by telling me to talk less with a smaller video is extremely fucked up when you're saying, yeah, let's let the hearing person speak, but the deaf person needs to talk less. What is that? This is proof that Holly was on Reddit. This is proof that they told me that I was discriminating against them if I didn't want hearing opinions on deaf issues. This is proof that Holly commented on a video where I asked for no hearing opinions and stated that hearing comments may be subject to ridicule, as well as evidence of what I said that they consider me silencing them. And this is also evidence that Mary Beth did dox Tom and that was supported in the Reddit thread, because it was dismissed as doxing even though it was.
All right, so the last segment of that video with the evidence, if you did want to see that, all of the sources for everything we've been discussing in these videos are linked in the description of the videos, and the description of this live stream has all of these videos linked. So if you go click the Stop Devaluing Deaf People to Support Hearing People one, if you did want to see with clarity those screenshots, if it didn't stream right on the resolution, you can click there. You can get a better view. You may have to adjust the quality in the settings but it should be good with the auto. Oops. So yeah. This next post, I just want to talk about it, called I Don't Trust Myrnie Ann 83 Misnomers Catherine Temp Deaf No More Than Hearing About Deafness. Just going to try and give you a quick summary recap on this one. This one I think is, if you do care about deaf issues, you're trying to work on anti-deafness and just understand better social issues regarding deafness, please go watch this video. It really shows you examples and further explanation and impact, as well as gives a deeper reading of this blog here, people who hear but don't listen, of hearsplaining or ableism, which is when hearing people try to speak over deaf people on deafness, or dismiss deaf people on deafness and gaslight deaf people on deafness. And yeah, fucking this one, it has 60 links in here. It's got sources for everything that I'm discussing in the video linked in the comments as well. Highly recommend checking it out. If you click the comments to go in sort by newest first, it should produce in the reverse numerical order here. So yeah, I highly recommend checking that out. 60 sources for you to see. Fucking, and the parts, it's broken down into talking about the harms of misrepresenting sign and deafness. So this one person, Myrnie Ann 83, she was teaching wrong signs. Like, she was teaching the sign for wine as water. She was telling people that this was water, but it's wine, this is water. She was trying to tell people that the sign for food is to do, she was using the correct hand motion and placement for food, but she was using it 4 times and did not explain to people the difference between food and eat, the difference between a verb and a noun. She also was teaching people that the sign for Jewish, no, the sign for, I think she was teaching people that the sign, I can't remember if she was teaching people that the sign for Israel was Jewish or the sign for Jewish was Israel, but I discussed that in the video here accurately. But now that it's months later, because I made this video in January, so it's 7 months later now, I can't remember if she taught people that the sign for Israel was Jewish or the sign for Jewish was Israel, but she got that wrong as well. She was using the wrong sign. And she had people signing, she had, I think it was misnomers. In here, I showed what she signed in this video. It shows the accurate one. But so right now I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. This I think may be inaccurate, but she did something like, I think she was signing like, I don't think she said fuck Jewish people, but she was signing like down with Jewish people or something like that. And I think she meant to say, like, I think she was meant to speak against Israel, for pro-Palestine, but she was accidentally using the sign for Jewish people, because she was going off of, she was showing the video of Myrnie Ann 83, and she had done a video from Myrnie Ann 83, a stitch, and so she was being taught wrong by her. And so this is a real life example. And both of them gaslit me And Murnian 83 heavily allowed others, in my opinion, to discriminate against me on this topic. And in an even worse way, in my opinion, than what happened with the Ammy Robinson situation we saw earlier. And so yeah, and in this video, I discussed, in their arguments revolving them excusing them teaching sign language incorrectly. A lot of this is addressing those arguments and explaining the history behind the cultural appropriation of sign language as well. But I also include Catherine Tempf because she basically wrote an article about how deaf people should feel more grateful for hearing people's input on deafness. So yeah, and so I talk about how harmful that concept was as well. And then we did a thing on that. So in here, I talk a lot about hearsplaining and deaf autonomy, particularly in like part 2. Like the whole thing, I talk about it, but I really talk about hearsplaining in part 2. Let's see. I talk about hearsplaining in part 5. And the rest of it also provides a bunch of information. Part 8, I show you the difference between solidarity and sea lioning, as well as tokenization. Then we discussed the part 9, the Catherine Tempf situation, and the concept of hearing saviorism and misinformation. In part 11, I do discuss how decolonizing is a journey, of course, and I discuss for those requests for those concepts to have been deleted. And I provide another example of the hearsplaining and the appropriation and misuse of sign language and deafness, as well as intention means less than impact, discussing all of that. You know what I'm saying? So this video, in my opinion, is very relevant. I highly recommend you go watch it. It's linked in the description of this live stream. Because it's about 2 hours, I'm not going to hit play on this video because we're already at 2 hours on this live stream. So if I just go to the next 2, I'm hoping we can wrap this up in maybe 30-ish to 45 minutes. Okie dokie. So from here on out, I'm going to continue watching these 2 videos, and then we shall do a recap, summary, and conclusion of it all.
I wasn't even going to do this video, but then this dude did a video about me, so then I'm like, alright, well, I guess I'm doing this video. Now, the video I was tagged in is an apology video, and I've got mixed feelings about the video itself. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to attempt to educate, I'm going to give this dude another chance since he apologized, and if he's not willing to understand, at least this message may reach others who do care. And then we're going to talk about what I like and don't like about the apology, just in terms of reconciliation, not to appropriate that term from Native issues, because I know that is a Native term to talk about truth and reconciliation in terms of decolonizing, so I don't know if it's appropriate of me to say reconciliation here in this aspect, so I'll let people correct me on that. But in terms of, how should these situations be handled, And I'll talk about that when I recap the harm and the issues here, as well as going over that apology. But before we start, the reason I didn't even want to make this video is because I'm planning on doing a really long live stream. I'm hoping to do it tonight. I might have to do it like tomorrow if tonight doesn't go my way, but my goal is to get that bitch done tonight. And this live stream is going to be about everything I've ever discussed regarding the history of deaf issues. So yeah, look out for that. So in this comment, this dude bluntly has spoken, said, "My ears and my heart are open to the words of people that belong to indigenous cultures. I don't know why some are deaf or have a hardened heart that they need evidence to prove it." I don't know what that was about being open to indigenous culture, because you are open to me. So then I said, there is nothing wrong with being deaf. Being deaf is a good thing. Please stop discriminating against deaf people. I also said, it is hearing people who don't listen and oppress, not deaf. He said, I never said anything about people with limited or lack of hearing ability. Look at the whole context of the sentence, not just the one word. I said, you said you don't know why some people are deaf. I am deaf. If you are not deaf, you have no lived experience to speak over a deaf person on deafness. If you don't understand why the context of your usage of deafness is discrimination, ask the deaf person who told you it was for help instead of continuing to discriminate against deaf people. Then I told him all, like, I know I said I just don't have time, but I might make it today. Turns out I did. And then after that, it's been a couple of minutes. He said, whole context of the sentence in regards to the video. And I said, I am informing you that context is oppressive to and discrimination against deaf people. Stop discriminating against us. Look at the context in which you degrade my community and identity. I said on a video about oppression, use a marginalized community identity as an insult, claiming you don't know why people are like us when we are oppressed. That comes from our genocide. Deaf identity refers to our ethnic group. Any other usage of the word as if it is an insult is based on our eradication, genocide, and eugenics. You hearsplaining, instead of listening to a deaf on deaf issues, is you proving my point. It's hearing people who don't listen and silence and oppress deaf. And then he said, I used the word deaf. Yes, I won't deny that. It was not in reference to people with limited lack of hearing. You are becoming upset over nothing but a misunderstanding of the context in which I used it. And I said, you are not acknowledging the etymology of the word deaf or its ties to our culture. I'm not arguing about what you meant. I'm telling you why what you said and are saying are discriminating. Then I said, me informing you of your discrimination is not me misunderstanding. A hearing person telling a deaf person they don't understand deaf issues is discrimination. And by that, I meant a hearing person telling a deaf person the deaf person doesn't understand deaf issues is discrimination. It's totally fine for a hearing person to say they don't understand deaf issues, of course. And then he said, no degradation is intended. The way you're coming at me, though, is completely inappropriate. Instead of a conversation, you're berating me when I'm trying to calmly express my intentions. And then I said, intention and impact are not the same. You're not intending to discriminating doesn't change. You not intending to discriminate doesn't change your discrimination or the impact of what you did. I asked you politely, please stop discriminating. Also, I never berated him. I only ever explained the harm he is causing. Also, you don't get to decide what's an appropriate way for me to ask you to stop discriminating against me. I also told him, asking you to please stop discriminating against me and then holding firm that deaf experience discrimination and you're doing it and still doing it and asking you to stop isn't attacking you. I said I have calmly informed you that you are discriminating and I explained why and you continue to gaslight me and dismiss me. If you're not deaf, that is discrimination. And I said, how is me asking you to stop discriminating against me an attack on you, but you claim you discriminating isn't an attack, even though you have been informed you're doing it and won't stop doing it? The first time I believe you didn't intend to, but you continuing to discriminate against me after being informed what you're doing is discrimination is intentional discrimination. The last comment he gave to me, try not coming at people with the assumption that they have intentions of ill will and perhaps you will see a different result. I didn't get to respond to that one because he blocked me before I could respond to that one. And I find that extremely abusive and oppressive. And I ask you very politely. I politely let you know that you are causing harm and all you did was gaslight me and insult me for it. Telling me to treat you nicer while you discriminate against me or you won't stop discriminating against me is colonizer mindset. It's oppressive. I'm also bi. I don't know if you're queer. If you're queer, I wish you would just say that on your page. I don't like that you call yourself an ally because you're not a safe space to me. You don't get to decide if you're a safe space. You're not a safe space. So, apology. What I like about it, you did apologize. You did acknowledge you caused harm and say you're sorry and say that you want to try to do better. That's what I like about the apology. What I don't like about the apology is it's way too fucking long and the good things that you did are overshadowed by a lot of the harmful things you continue saying in it. All of this stuff where you try to explain what you meant and all of that and blah, 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 I don't need to hear it. I don't. And when you discriminate, if you're not part of the community you're discriminating against, if you're apologizing, you do not need to explain. For example, in your apology, you talk about not wanting to self-center, then you self-center anyway, and you're more focused on how you felt attacked than you're worried about whether or not you're discriminating. Still, in my opinion, to me, and I just worry if you're just more worried about how you look than caring about decolonizing. And I don't know you that well, so I'm not saying that is like you. I'm saying that's my concern because of how you treated me. And so, like, if that's not you, I think you'll be able to take this criticism in order to do better. And if that is you, a hit dog will holler. Am I allowed to say that, or is that AAVE? I've been learning so many phrases, or AAVE. I don't want to do that. So, I gotta go fucking Google that. Is this problematic? That's fine. Look, I'm not perfect. I'm problematic too, okay? We're all problematic. We're all fucking learning and shit. But, let's all do better and shit. But this is what these are my issues with all of this, so.
I'm primarily making this video for deaf child. Please use your deaf child. If you're not a user, you can swipe away or stay. I don't really care. This video is an apology. I am sorry for the comment that I left on our friend's page there. And I won't even try to pronounce her username because no, I will butcher it and I don't want to do that. You may be thinking to yourself, why is this apology coming out? There's a few reasons for it. That's why this will be a longer video. I'll use a lot of I statements, and it's not out of self-centeredness. It's because I want to make sure that what I'm saying does not convey any kind of attack or anything along those lines. When I left that comment on there, I honestly did not see any problem or discrimination with using the word deaf. I was using it as a descriptor, and in a way that I've heard my entire life being used with a slight variation to the words. I did not view it as ableism or discrimination because I wasn't thinking about the deaf community when I wrote that. Literally wasn't even on my mind, either positively or negatively. When you initially commented towards me after I had posted that, it knocked me back with the way that it had been written. And in a way I'm not trying to police your tone. I'm just trying to explain how it affected me. See, 15 years ago, I was involved in a really bad accident. I got lucky, but got unlucky at the same time. See, while I survived and continued to exist with just a broken collarbone, something else happened as well. See, I had a bleed in my brain from that accident, and it changed me a little bit in the way that I process information, especially of the written kind. I'm not trying to excuse my actions. I'm just make that clear. Yeah, I don't have brain injury with already having neurospiciness and ADHD. Things get misunderstood pretty easily. So again, I'm going to apologize because it was me. I misunderstood what it was you said. And you may be wondering why I'm doing an apology video. Well, our mutual reached out to me and wanted to speak to me about the interaction. And with the way that she spoke to me and explained to me what was wrong with what I had said, I was able to hear it and not view it as an attack. And I know that wasn't your intention. But to my damaged neurology and the fact that I've had one hell of a day today, that's the way that it was viewed by my brain. I don't know if anyone else saw the same way I did. And it doesn't really matter. I haven't really done a lot of research into the deaf community and how there are certain things that are considered discriminatory and ableist until now, because it's never come up. That is how infrequently I use some of those colloquialisms. And I probably didn't say that right. Thanks, Brain. But now that I become aware that it's a problem, I promise you I will start to change myself. I will do more reading and research into it, so you don't have to do any additional work. I will do it myself so that I can be a better human. For me, part of my path, wearing this, is to be the best person that I can be. And I am human. I screw up. It does happen. But I also try to take accountability for what I do. And I'm taking accountability for my words and everything that goes along with that. So definitely, I hope you can understand that I am actually remorseful for the words that I said in that comment and the following conversation that you and I had. And at the same time, I'm really hopeful that you can understand that my brain doesn't work like everyone else's. That certain phrases and phrasing of sentences can cause certain people, like myself, to view it as not what is on the surface, but as something that is intended as an attack on the person. So I apologize for the accusations I made concerning berating me. The reason I came to that was I get 4 or 5 messages back to back. All that felt like a written attack on me. When what I didn't know was wrong. I'm not saying that was your intention at all. But that's how my broken brain saw it. So once again, I am sorry. I did not mean to cause any harm or damage to the deaf community. It was never my intent. And now I'm learning more. Learning how to be a better person. To wrap it up, as we're already over 6 minutes. I am sorry for the words I used. Thank you for opening my eyes to know that what I said was not right. My damaged brain saw what you said as an attack and told me to defend. I didn't view what I said was a problem because it's so ingrained in the hearing community's language. I'm going to try to be a better person, doing the best I can. I'm going to read more about the issue, and I will take a more active role when it comes to listening to the deaf community when they are putting out information. I view all humans as equal, regardless of ability or lack of, which is probably another reason I didn't see a problem with my comment. And I forget that other people don't view the world like I do. And I've said it a few times, but I am sorry, and I will try to change.
Okie dokie, back again. Alright, so the video I'm going to do on the recap on everything I've ever done on deaf history is going to have to wait because I was tagged in another video by this guy. I was trying to give him an opportunity, to work on himself, to be a better person and everything like that. And so now we're going to talk about performative allyship, and we're going to talk about discrimination and gaslighting and continuing to discriminate. We're going to talk about oppressors and also the Darvo method, which is deny, attack, reverse offender. So just to recap, this guy used deafness as an insult. I let him know that that was discrimination, and then he was arguing with me about why it's not, about why I'm wrong, and how I misunderstood him, and then he blocked me, and then he unblocked me, and then he tagged me in an apology video. And in my video, I was very polite. I, stuck to trying to educate on the issues, trying to hope that maybe this guy wants to do better and work on anti-discrimination. I let him know what I liked about his apology video and where it went wrong, so he can understand how to not cause harm to others. Because this person does not experience oppression to my understanding, I just don't think he understands or cares about anti-discrimination work. His response to me giving him another chance and allowing him into my space again and doing this other video for him, trying to educate him, which I guess now it's just for people who do care, was to then tag me in another video, and it's very harmful. I will leave that video at the end for you to see, and you can make judgments for yourself. And I am going to also right now discuss some points and some critiques that I have from that video. Then he says people can self-proclaim to be an ally and then back up those claims with their actions or whatever. Well, you can't self-proclaim to be an ally. And he doesn't think that being an ally is the same as being a safe space. To be an ally is to be a safe space. So if you're not a safe space, you're not an ally, okay? You do not get to decide if you are an ally to or a safe space to other people. I'm a deaf, queer person. I'm of indigenous descent. And I have told you, you cannot just go around saying, nah, you respect Native people and treat us this way. You can't say you're an ally to queer people and treat queer people this way. Because now you've been queerphobic, you've been anti-deaf, you're ableist, and you're audist, and you're orlist. When you self-proclaim yourself as an ally in order to gaslight marginalized communities, you are tokenizing your relationship and proximity to other people in order to discriminate against them. Proximity doesn't mean shit if you're still discriminating against us. You saying you're going to answer unasked questions is interesting, because that's just us thinking you know what questions I have when you don't. I never asked you any questions. So you're not answering any questions of mine. Therefore, you just want to hear yourself talk more and while disregarding everything I try to educate on regarding deaf issues. As someone who goes to therapy, if your therapy isn't helping you work on your self-accountability and understanding of how to work better with relationships or care about other people, then you're not really working that hard in therapy. And instead of telling others how hard you're working in therapy, perhaps you should discuss these issues with your therapist instead. And that's not to be ableist, perhaps it is, but, I'm in therapy. To me, I don't get to say, well, I'm in therapy so I can discriminate against you. No, that's not how it works. It has nothing to do with this. And by the way, you continuing to try to speak over me, a deaf person, on deaf issues, is discrimination. You're still discriminating. You have not learned anything. Insert that JoJo Siwa clip with the Abby Miller thing. JoJo, have you learned nothing? That's you right now, man. You trying to explain how your mind processes information is you excusing your discrimination. It's not accountability. You making excuses for why you discriminated and continue to discriminate against me is not okay, and mental health isn't an excuse for your discrimination. Understand that. Now, you call yourself an LGBTQIA ally, and then you say your identity of queerness has nothing to do with you being an ally to queer people. Yes, it does. If you're not queer, you can't decide if you're a queer ally because you don't know what it's like to need or be a queer ally. Only queer people can decide who is a queer ally. To them, You can't decide you're an ally to other people. You can't label yourself an ally. You're not one. You've already shown that by your actions. So to say that identity has no place in the discussion of allyship shows how either ignorant you are or oppressive you are. You also tell me I'm the first deaf person you've ever spoken to. We are 15% of the population. 15% of people do not feel safe around you. Okay, understand that. Because if you don't know deaf people, you're not a safe space for deaf people. You're not an ally to anybody. You're not a safe space. Process why don't deaf people feel safe around you. Process and think on that. Being proud to admit you don't know any deaf people isn't a good thing. Because we are 15% of the population. We are out here. If we're not making ourselves known to you, it's because you're not safe for us to be around. Because if we have to hide our identity, our deaf identity, it's because it's not safe for us to identify as deaf to you. Now, then he's focusing on why do I hate him so much. I don't hate you. I hate why you discriminating against me. And for you to discriminate against me, which is hatred, which is prejudice plus power. And to then claim me fighting your hatred against me means I'm hating you is gaslighting. Okay, this is what I'm talking about with you being Dargo, okay? Alright? What did I say about a hit dog will holler? When you hate deaf people so much, not a single deaf person feels safe around you. And then you have the audacity to tell deaf people they're hating on you if they ask you to please stop discriminating against us. Please stop. I've been begging you to stop discriminating against me all day. And then you have the balls to say, I'm hurting you? Or I'm attacking you? Oh, hell no, bitch. This is for educational purposes only. And the fact that you're more upset I showed your comments where you discriminated against me than the fact that you discriminated against me shows how messed up you are. You say you are a firm believer that short apologies don't mean a thing. But for you to give me this long-ass apology and force me to listen to more discrimination for you, and then still continue discriminating against me as a deaf person shows you're not sincere at all in your apology. Your allyship is performative. It seems it doesn't matter how long or short the apology is, you just don't fucking care. Because you cannot convince me that someone who cares would continue discriminating against me. You telling me that you sincerely apologize while continuing to discriminate against me, while claiming that I'm attacking you by discussing your discrimination against me, it shows that you're not sincere at all. That's not sincerity. And to claim that is sincere, if you really believe that's sincere, that's very disturbing. I am very, very disturbed. If you think that's genuine at all, it's very bad. Please, no, this isn't good. The fact that you think the people you discriminate against need to listen to you explain why you're discriminating against them is very disturbing. It is also a form of discrimination. In the deaf community, it's called hearsplaining or ableism. That is when you try to tell a deaf person about their own lived experience. And when you try to explain the discrimination I face to me as if I don't understand it, that is you continuing to discriminate against me. It's as if you were a cis-het man trying to tell me which period products I need for my fucking body. And then for you to say you're going to go learn about deaf issues, but not from me because I called you out for discriminating against me, shows you don't care to learn about deaf issues. Most deaf content is controlled by hearing people. And if you're not listening to us deaf on deaf issues, you're still discriminating against us. Never tag me in anything or ever contact me again. You are not worth my time. Any further contact or tagging from you is harassment and discrimination.
Longer than 60 seconds, shorter than 10 minutes, and shorter than the last one. Hi, me again. Yeah, it was a long video because I had a lot to say, but I'm going to address a few things used in this video. First off, just so you know, I've recorded this about 3 times because I want to be very concise in my language. Firstly, I never said that I'm a safe space. People can subsequently be an ally and then back up their claim by their actions. I will not flaunt those actions because those are between me and the people I felt. I won't be putting you on blast. I'm just going to be answering a few of the unasked questions you had in the video. Going to therapy teaches you how to put things on yourself by using I statements. Most of that long video was me explaining why my brain was working the way it was when I wrote said comment, and then how I'm going to fix it in the future so that I don't make that same mistake again. My gender identity and or orientation has no place in any kind of response like this. Let's first why I blocked you, and then unblocked you. I need to step away. I need to stop replying, and I need to stop seeing your comments coming at me because I knew that I probably wasn't receiving things the right way, and I needed to take a break and come back to it. And as you saw on my profile page, I have a lot of videos, and I usually respond to people that comment on my videos. So yeah, I'm on TikTok a lot, checking up on those comments. I'm not going to play the whole I'm from a different generation and all that, because yes, you and I both know that that is cop out. What I will say is that when I was young, we didn't have the same kind of, trying to think of the word here because my brain not working, 1 second, the same kind of outspoken advocacy that we do now. That will tell me about the word advocacy. So no, we didn't learn about the deaf community and their needs. And in my life, I've never encountered somebody that was completely deaf, so I've never needed to learn until now. I don't know what kind of gotcha you think I had by posting my comments already on a publicly viewable video, but if it makes you feel better, sure. Because yes, I did say that, and I didn't continue saying it after I sat and thought about it, but I leave it up so people can learn, from my mistake. Now, I don't know if it's just that video up or what it may have been, but it sounds like there's a lot of hate that you have for me, and I'm sorry that I induced that. I don't know if I said it in this edit or not, but I don't care what people think about me. My actions speak a lot louder than my words, and I'm very much aware of that. And let me just address like the last video where I did the apology. I am a firm believer that short apologies don't mean a thing. Long apologies show sincerity. And I was sincere, and still am sincere, with my apology that I gave you via video. Like I said, the video and its length was so that I was able to explain why my brain was working the way it was at the time that I wrote that comment. So while I will be continuing my education about the issues that plague the deaf community, I will not be learning it from you, because I don't trust you. I have found in my life people that speak too quickly, or trying to hide something within the words, and that's from first-hand encounters with people. But may you find peace. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay, so in the last 2 things that I just showed you, those videos, like, in both of those, he made his video first, and then I made my video as a response to his for both of those. But when I made the videos, I put myself first and then him. But what I said, he made his videos, both of those videos first, and I made mine second, and I included what he said in mine. So yeah, fucking, and then I also, when I was telling him he's doing the Darvo method, I forgot to say the V for victim when I was talking about what Darvo stands for. In terms deny, attack, reverse victim offender. I forgot to say the victim part in that video as well. But yeah, so let's do a little recap of everything real quick. So just to recap, today what we covered was we looked at the Ammy Robinson situation with using tone deafness as an insult. We looked over the comments that I left there, how I addressed that, how I tried to advocate for not only myself but all deaf people, how those comments were received not only by Ammy on one video, but also by her audience on two different videos. And we looked at three different videos where this word is used. And we just, reflected on that. And then after that, I showed you guys. And I also showed you guys, like, in my Google account, like how like I found my comments, that I have been interacting with her for a long time to support her too. Um but yeah, so and I also found some articles and sources for you guys to check out regarding what is ableism and AUDISM against deaf people and is using tone deaf negative ableism. We discuss all the ways in which it's extremely harmful. And though, yes, this reminds me, going right back to where we just were with the Ammy Robinson situation, that brings me back to the perpetuation and normalization of discrimination in society against deaf people. And I really feel that that situation is a really good example of that, of how the concept of normalizing tone deaf then normalizes the discrimination against deaf people, where you see how many hearing people try to gaslight me, the deaf person. Because, and here's how I know they're not deaf. I would be very shocked if any one of them are deaf. If any of them are deaf, then I believe they're culturally assimilated to the hearing world and hearing identities. Because with deaf people, of course, we're not a monolith, so not all deaf people, but deaf people who are engaging in deaf community typically do at least can come to this common ground of where, okay, your deaf experience is different than my deaf lived experience, but both of our deaf experiences are still valid. Most deaf people come to that common ground, even if we disagree on a deaf issue. And in a lot of cases, deaf people will, even if one person is like, I don't think that's discrimination for me, but since my deaf people feel it's discrimination, I'm still going to back them up, right? A lot of deaf people will be that way because, if they feel something is discrimination that another person doesn't, then they want that same backup still when it comes to fighting the oppression, right? Um, and so that we also will have those arrangements, but then you also, of course, will have the deaf people who will be just like any other problematic situation. Well, I'm deaf, so it's okay, and you know that happens too, of course. But when I'm showing you the resources, and those are linked in the description of this video, to show you that this is a common issue for deaf community, it's like, why not just fucking respect us, right? Um, so yeah, and then we also looked at my prior content published on concepts of hearsplaining and ableism against deaf people using terms like tone deaf, as well as how people, it's majority focused on the way hearing people will try and speak over lived experiences of deaf people, and it starts with the tone deaf one. But in the Murney and 83 misnomers Catherine Temp video, I do believe I also address ableism in that video as well. um and so yeah, fucking um And then we did discuss it again at the end there with using deafness as an insult as discrimination and the performative allyship. That kind of actually did tie that up a little bit nicely too. Um, Now, I have further critiques about even some of my commentary in those ending videos. Just about the one thing I don't know, I'm debating on where I said I don't know if this guy experiences oppression or not because of the way he was treating me, but he did at that point. I think I did know that he had disclosed with me he was dealing with his own medical issues. Um, Whether or not I'm ableist for that, of course, is something to consider. I think that is for sure because, anybody who experiences that type of mental issue, or I don't know if it's ableist or saying mental issue. I have my own mental issues, so, um, but, in terms of health issues, I don't know what the right word to use, but you know what I'm saying. Um, Fucking I feel like, like anybody experiencing medical conditions can experience oppression in the medical field. Anyone under capitalism experiences oppression. So, but in my opinion, whether or not someone is aware of the oppression they're experiencing, perhaps that's a different situation. Perhaps that's what I should have said, or me, like where I was going there. So there are definitely things that I say constantly to critique myself on, right? And I think it's good to, when I look back on my stuff, I'm like, oh wow, how can I fix that for next time? And I do think on a certain level with self confidence, we need to have the self love to not always be criticizing ourselves or something. But at the same time, when it comes to decolonizing, that does take a certain level of consistent analyzing of your vernacular and behavior in order to adjust and be accessible and inclusive to everybody. Um, because we have to accept that, if we want to quote, or reference, I don't think I can quote this correctly, so I'm going to reference, I think I've tried and failed to reference this before, Kamala Harris with the context quote. We came in the context of all that came before us. Yeah, I fucked that up big time. I'm sorry. But that, you know what I'm saying, right? Like that concept. When we take it back there, right? Like we have to admit we exist in the context of a colonial society. So therefore, to be like, well, let's just ignore it. In my opinion, that's not decolonizing, that's upholding it, right? So it's just like value alignment, I guess, reflecting on that. Like, and I get when it comes to human condition, we make mistakes, but it's like, are you putting in effort to do better? And I struggle with the environment I held in that comment section, and I really do believe that showing the past ideology of the perception of deafness shows why that type of mentality became upheld in the comment section and how it became allowed and normalized there to that degree, because they have increased their tolerance to the anti-deafness over time to where now, and you pointed out, they don't see it. It's just like when I smoke so much weed, you tell me I smell like weed, and I'm like, I don't smell any marijuana. And you're like, bitch, you're loud as shit. And, um, you know what I'm saying? Because I have a tolerance. It's just like that. That is exactly how discrimination is in society, and how awful and how it is to become normalized for any form of oppression and abuse in our societies and cultures, in my opinion. Like, that's how we get there. That's how we got this deep into it, right? So how do we get out? How do we get out of the hole? How do we move from point A to point B? That's what I've been trying to fucking process in my damn live streams, man. That's what the fuck I'm trying to do. I think I'm failing. I don't think I'm doing a great job, but like that's what I'm at least talking about, because I feel like if I just keep talking about it, maybe someone, like, maybe it'll work out. Just, I don't know. Like maybe it'll maybe if I just keep trying with, like, keep investing time, energy, resources, I've been, we've all struggling. I'm gonna have to do a whole nother concept on trying to attempt to, I guess, is it even appropriate? I don't know that if that's the right thing to do. I was thinking about whether or not it's appropriate to try and explain your own decolonizing journey in a live stream, or if it's that just then creating content off the concept and then upholding colonialism. And is that what I'm doing now? I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm being problematic or not. I just know that these are thoughts in my head that I feel in my heart should be talked about. Um, and I'm very grateful to you for watching today, for being with me today. It means a lot just that you at least, care to consider these human rights issues with me. Um, Very grateful for your time. And yeah, I appreciate you. I'm going to step away now, just end it right here. It just feels like a good time. Um, so yeah, and I want to reiterate, I'm grateful for all that have come here, and I hope you all reflect and reconsider value of alignment in your spaces and how you can create spaces for anti-discrimination to be discussed in your community. So yeah, thank you for your time today. Thanks for watching. Join the loyalty program at noladeafchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.